Boards and booze, booze and boards, drinks and beers, fight some hordes. Drank too much, forgot our swords, ran back home, filled our gourds, got drunk again, sang some chords. Boards and booze and boards, with Mickey and Jeb.
Greetings, travelers. Welcome to Middle Earth. So I hear you seek adventure. Well, you've come to the right place. Along your way, you'll encounter marvelous races such as the elves, the dwarves, and the hobbits. But be wary, many enemies may cross your path, such as goblins, trolls, and even stupid orcs.
Oh, hey Mickey, what you doing?
Oh, hi, Jeb. I was just introducing the people to our next game.
Oh, so you already told them that it's the Lord of the Rings living card game?
No, but you just did.
Well, yeah, we are going to be playing Lord of the Rings living card game. It's by Fantasy Flight Games, and what is it based on? I think
The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah.
And it's me, in case you couldn't tell.
Alright, so I guess before we start doing the episode, quick rundown of it. It's what, 2 to 4 players?
2 to 4 players, even though I think the box only... Does it say 2 to 4? I think it says... The box only says 1 to 2.
Right.
And that might be just because it works best for 2 with just this box. But if you have another one, 4... as a matter of fact, we didn't actually realize it was 4 until a little later on after we started playing it. But it is 1 to 4, and it's kind of cool when you play with 2
yeah, not 2 to 4, 1 to 4, because you can solo it.
Yeah, you can solo it. And you know what? I'm just going to say it right now. A quick preview of the end. This is one of Jeb and I's favorite games.
Oh, yeah.
We play this thing all the time.
I think of all the LCGs, this is the one we played the most.
Absolutely.
So. And we're not even, I think we finished one cycle of it.
We're, an entire cycle, and we finished the deluxe, and we're on the second cycle. We don't get to meet as often as we'd like, so. But anyways, who's it by? Fantasy Flight Games.
Yeah,
and
I don't think it has a person. It just says based on the novels. Oh, no, there we go.
Nate French. Hey, we can say that name.
Yeah.
All right. We didn't butcher, but we will butcher some of the names in the game. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, but I'm not so avid as I can pronounce everybody's name correctly. So when we butcher names, you guys can comment and say that we're stupid and we didn't say it right. But anyway, so we'll be back in a second with setup, right?
Yep. Setup and then some gameplay.
All right. See you in a minute.
Alright, so to begin, we'll talk about the components of the game. There's not too much, I guess, to show you. To begin, these are the cards of the game. We've got different hero decks, depending on their, what is it called?
Lore? No.
I know the green one's lore, but it's different types. Spheres of influence, something like that?
Yes.
So these are just separated by the different spheres. This is the encounter deck, which contains all the enemy cards.
And so this is what you'll be playing against, like Jeb just said, since this is your enemy. So basically, it's a co-op, and you're going to play with. You can play solo, or you'll play with a partner, and you guys will, try to beat this deck. Based on whatever the scenario gives you. So over here we have resource tokens. In the middle here we have wound tokens, and on the end we have progress tokens, which we'll get into a little bit detailed later. These are threat levels, which will increase and decrease throughout the game. These are the quest scenario cards, and finally that is the first person token over in the, I guess,
Top right.
Top right.
Yeah. Alright, so let's first talk about the cards. So the first thing we'll talk about is the quest deck. And this is the quest that you do when you play the game. You choose it depending on whatever you want to play. So we're actually playing the first quest of the core. And the way it's set up is there's an A side and a B side. So when you start, you want to put them ordered by number, and with 1A on the top, And let's see, so this is the name of the quest. Underneath it in smaller print is actually, what is it, the set or the adventure pack that it comes out of.
Well, I don't know that.
I think for the cores it's different.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Up here is, like I said, the number inside of the quest. There is some fluff text down here.
The fluff text on these is pretty good too.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth reading. Don't skip over it.
Underneath that is the setup. So this tells you how to set up the scenario before you play it. And the other thing for this is, if you see right here, there are different symbols. That's how you build the encounter deck. So what you'll do is search for the encounter cards with those symbols.
Which is really, this is one of the mechanics in the game that's really cool, because the core box and then all the adventure sets that you can get afterwards all have a different symbol, like Jeb just said. So this one has a picture of a spider, a picture of a skull, and a picture of the tree. So what you would do is you would go through and you would find all the encounter cards that have well, it's not really a skull, it's like a goblin figure, but you know what I mean. And there's the trees, and then the spiders. So you take all of those, with the exception of if you want to play easier, some of them are marked with a gold ring around them. If you want to play easier, you take all the gold ring ones out.
Yep. And then that's side A of the quest card. On the back of it, when you flip it over, it still has the same information up here with the name. This number here is how many progress tokens it takes to complete the quest. And then sometimes there's fluff text on it, sometimes there's actual effects when the card flips. So depending on the situation, there's something down here. And that's it for the quest cards.
And usually, one other thing, if you need to do something, it'll be in normal font, and the fluff will be in italics.
Yep. All right. So for the encounter deck, it's made up of different types of cards. So the first type of card is the monster or enemy cards. So the way these are set up is there is, what is that?
Threat level.
Yeah, you check it against your threat. Later on, we'll explain more about that. Under that is the enemy stats, which you can see there's a number next to a symbol. We'll get to that. The number in red is their life, how much hit points they can take before they die. Over here, like Mickey said, is the set that they're from. You have their name here, and then they have subtypes, and then also effects. So some of them have when revealed effects, some have effects when they're in play. And finally, at the bottom is the shadow effect, which that will come into play later, but that's where that remains. It's separated by this line.
This line is on everything that has a shadow effect.
Yep, so you just kind of ignore that when the enemy comes out. And then at the bottom it says enemy, so that's what that is.
And then you have his stats over here, which the shield is its defense or armor. The battle axes are its attack value, and the top one that's a little, I don't know, it looks like a goblin head or a crown or whatever you want to call it, is actually the threat number, which is a little different than this threat level.
All right. The next thing is treachery cards. Yep, it says it right at the bottom. Over here on the left side is the name of the treachery. The effect of it is in plain text here, and below it, like we said before, is the shadow effect. So these are just kind of like one-shot effects.
Okay, I will. So just to back up real quick on that anything. So that's the threat. That's the engagement cost. That's how they call it. In case you start reading the rules, but.
All right. Next up are locations. So you want to talk about those, Mickey?
Sure. Okay. So the locations are going to come out during the game, and basically what happens is thematically what it's like is like you're on the main quest, but these are areas that you may encounter along the way. So. There'll be a phase where you can travel to a location, and if you travel to a location, then your progress tokens will be placed on that location to be able to pass through it based on whatever number is here. So in this particular case, with Necromancer's Pass, you would need 2 progress tokens on this to advance, to basically get them out of the way.
Yep. Up here is the threat level of the location, and that's only active when it's in the staging area. You've got some subtypes for the location, and then also effects, and some flavor text down there.
Other than that, sometimes based on the pack, you'll start being introduced to new things that'll go in there. But those are the 3 basic elements of it. Sometimes, as you get along in the game, they'll start adding in like quest items, I guess I'll call it, and then allies.
Oh yeah.
Things like that will start to be introduced to the game. But the rules are pretty clear once you get to those new items on how they affect the encounter deck. Some of them can be actually helpful, and some of them can be kind of bad.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a lot of bad.
A lot of bad stuff. All right.
It's not a nice game.
All right. So the next thing is the hero deck. All right. So for hero cards, you start with you actually have 3 heroes on your side that aren't put into your deck when you play. They sit out in front of you. So to go over a hero card, it has, what is that called?
Threat cost.
Threat cost. Below that are the stats. So similar to the enemies are you have an attack and a defense, and this one's called willpower.
That's correct. Instead of threat, they have willpower.
Yep. Below that is how much HP they take before they die. You've got name, and this one is a good example. It has a symbol in front of it, and that means you can only have 1 on the field at a time. And since you never actually get more heroes, it just means that...
although if you did have a common card with her name, you wouldn't be able to put her down.
Right. So. And below that is subtypes, her effects, some flavor text, and then in the corner is the sphere of influence and the blue.
And noted that it's a hero, so you can easily identify the heroes.
Yep. Next up is allies, which, similar to heroes, you have your stats. This is how much it costs to play the hero, life, sphere of influence, name, and effects, and it says ally, so not too much different there. Event cards. It has the cost of the card, name of the card on the left side, and sphere of influence, and
what it does.
Yeah.
So your event card is sort of like an instant in Magic. It's it'll tell you when you can play it, and then you just drop it. Most other things are going to have particular times when you can play them.
Yep. And then finally are attachment cards, and these actually get attached to
something.
Most
of the time, a hero or an ally.
You've got cost, name of the card, sphere of influence, subtype, effect, flavor text, and the fact that it's an attachment.
Right.
So.
And one other thing about attachments, Jeb.
Yep. We
have a restricted. Some attachments are restricted.
Yep.
So if they're restricted, I don't know if you can find one, but if it has the word restricted, that means you can only have up to 2 restricted items on your character. Otherwise, you'd have to get rid of 1. Other than that, you can have as many attachments as you want.
So there is a restricted right there. It says attached to hero restricted.
So if something ever causes you to have more, then you can't do it. So we'll go over setup now. Again, like Jeb said earlier, you're going to grab a quest that you want. You're going to grab the symbols and each of those symbols, all the cards, and put them to form the encounter deck. And then you're going to select 3 heroes of whatever you want. Later on, when you've played a little bit, you actually can mix up spheres if you want. There's a catch to that we'll explain in a little bit, though. So you'll grab your 3 heroes and you'll place those down here. You will, in a official game, the deck is 50, minimum of 50 cards. The starter decks that they recommend here, I think, are actually a little less
30,
than that, 30, okay? So and we are playing with the starter decks just to teach how to play the game. it's a minimum of 50, so remember you can go over if you want. So you'll select those out, and then you'll shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Jeb will shuffle, shuffle, shuffle the encounter deck because he's already selected all the cards that are supposed to be in there.
Yep.
This will be your draw pile for that, and
Put
the encounter deck will sit there. And Jeb and I like to keep the quest like that so we can see it. You have all your tokens over here,
Just
and
make sure they're within reach of everyone, like all other games.
Yeah. And then the last thing that you would do for the hero, and then I'll let Jeb talk about setting up this part of the counter deck, is that you will, the threat cost of the heroes, you'll add these up, and then you will take your threat counter and you will set that to the cost of all of these. So I have a 9 and a 7, so 16 and an 8, so this would be set at 24 if I added right. I guess Jeb can double check my math. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
8, 7, and 9. Alright, so, and then that would, you sit that just right by, that's probably a good spot. And then your heroes are set up.
You also want to determine first player, and since in this example there's only one person, we will just give it to this guy. So whoever this is first player. Next thing you want to do is, I believe, draw your starting hand of 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cards. We'll look at them. Yay. At this point, if you don't like them, you're allowed the mulligan. And for the mulligan, you just shuffle them back into the deck and draw 6 cards. But you have to stick with the cards that you have after that. So we'll just say that we're sticking with our hand. After that, we want to...
And we're going to start setting up the quest.
Alright, so for the quest...
Alright, I will read and...
So you can read the...
Hey, if you guys want to hear this is going to be the scenario.
We'll read it when we play it.
Okay. Well, the setup part of it,
Yeah.
we'll read you the flavor later. But setup is, search the encounter deck for 1 copy of the Forest Spider and 1 copy of Old Forest Road and add them to the staging area. And then shuffle the encounter deck. So Jeb right now is going to look for those 2 cards, and we now have the Old Forest, and we now have the Forest Spider. So, once you do that, Jeb's added those to the staging area, so I'm going to talk about that just for a little minute, just for a second here. This is the staging area. The staging area is, I guess, what's coming up, what's in front of you.
Like a waiting room.
Right. Okay, so anything in here, when cards refer to the staging area, that's what it means. Also, they are considered in play. So if a card says it's anything in play, these are in play. So
for the staging area, it does not include these. It doesn't include the deck, and it doesn't include the quest, or whatever location. But we'll show that in a second. But anything in the staging area, we just kind of keep in a row, so we know where that is.
Yep.
So Mickey read the initial setup of the card.
Yep.
So what we do after that is we flip it over, and we read what it says. And this one doesn't have any effect; it just has flavor text.
Yep. And then sometimes it will have something like Jeb said. It won't be just flavor, and it'll do additional in terms of the setup. What's neat now is now we know how many progress tokens we need to put on this quest in order to get to the next card. So that's how this is going to work, is when we put progress tokens on these, once we get to 8, we'll be able to go to the next card.
So I believe that's it for the setup of the game. We'll talk about gameplay. So an overview of the game is that it plays in rounds that continue until either we win or we lose.
Most of the time we lose.
Yep. So the first thing that you want to do to begin the game is the resource phase. So what this does is all heroes, or all of the players, are going to add 1 resource to each hero's resource pool. And what we usually do is just put them on the card. So say that's the beginning. So they all get a resource token, and then you get to draw a card. So add a card from your deck to your hand.
So basically, after you mulligan in this game, you're going to start with seven cards, or if you don't mulligan. Also, important to note, we're going to emphasize the word hero. Those are the only cards, unless the card says otherwise, that are going to get a resource token each turn.
Yep, because allies don't generate them
Nope.
unless they say so. And I think we've ran into one.
Yes.
So that's the resource phase. It's pretty much like you just get your resource tokens and your card that you draw. So the next phase is the planning phase. So
Right. So this is one of the opportunities to play cards from your hand. So basically, at this point, we're going to decide if we want to put any allies onto the board. We're going to decide if we want to attach anything to those allies, and if you have events that are either any time or during this phase, you could also play those down. Timing's kind of important in this game, so keep in mind, for example, I just said that now would be the time to play allies or attachments. If you get down the road during battle and you held out not putting a sword on your character and you're like, oh, I can just attach this now. Too late if you're already in battle. You didn't do it during the planning phase, so you're going to have to wait until the next turn to attach that weapon.
I don't know if you had said it, but planning phase is the only phase where you can put down allies and...
Yeah, that's what I was, and
Okay.
I was just elaborating, giving the example that's the, unless you have something that says otherwise to drop a card, you're not going to be able to do any allies, any attachments, or any events specific to the planning phase. Most events aren't specific to the planning phase, but I just thought I'd mention that.
So, as an example, it's the planning phase right now. So, we have an ally in our hand who costs 3, and it is the blue sphere of influence. I can't remember. I think that's Will? I don't remember. Spirit.
Right.
Spirit, Tactics, Leadership, Lore. Alright, so we have an ally in our hand who is Spirit, which is the blue color. And we want to, say we want to, I guess, play her. So it costs 3 to play her. So right now we have exactly 3 resource tokens. So we could spend all 3 of them to bring her into play. And if we do that, we just send these back to the bank. One thing to note is that since this is a spirit card, you have to pay from only spirit heroes.
Unlike other games, this game requires that all the resources that match where for what card you're trying to play. So it's not one of these deals where as long as I use one spirit thing, then I can use the resources otherwise. Nope. Everything has to be a spirit resource to get that card into play.
Yep. And if we don't want to play that ally, we have an event that we could pay the 3 for, and then also attachment. If I pay 1 for this attachment, I could pay 1 off of him, and then I could put it on anyone, so I'll just throw it on her. So that's how you would attach something. And the first player will do all their stuff first, and then it goes around in turn order.
And remember, these cards are very literal too. So that attachment, I don't know what it said, but if it said attached to a hero, and Jeb and I are playing, what does it say?
Attached to a location, so it actually would attach up there.
Let's pretend it was an attachment to a hero. So it's important to keep in mind, it's Jeb's turn, he's got a card that says he can attach it to a hero. If he wants to, he can attach it to one of my heroes.
Yes, that is.
So don't forget that the cards are very literal that way. So if you guys are playing as a team and you have a card that would work really good on, one of your...
well, an example is...
What am I trying to say? Whoever you're playing with, your buddy.
Yeah. So recently we've been playing with dwarves. So Mickey's had dwarves in his deck, and I've had dwarves in mine. And there's some cards that are specific to attaching to dwarves. So it's really good synergy in the sense that if I have like the dwarf boots in my hand, I could attach them to one of Mickey's dwarves. Stuff like that.
And it's a good example. Jeb brings up a good point. So since we are playing together, he runs 2 different spheres, and I run 2 different spheres. So I have the tactic sphere, which is a lot of the battle stuff, so I can toss over things like axes and things over to his dwarves, where he doesn't usually have any in his deck.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes into play. So just a reminder that, like you said, the cards are very literal, and it is a cooperative game, so you might be able to share some stuff.
Yep. So that's about it for the planning phase. All the players will do their things, starting with first player, going in turn order. Once that's over, it is the questing phase. So for the questing phase, you need to, I guess, all players will choose which heroes they're going to commit to the quest. So once you commit someone to the quest, we just kind of like push them forward a little bit to realize it.
Recommend in the book, I believe.
And then you'll tap them.
Don't say that. Wizards of the Coast will get on our case.
What is
Exhaust.
it? Exhaust them. Yeah. So, say I only want to commit her to the quest, then I will push her forward and exhaust her. So,
right.
And when you do that, you want to add up all the willpower of everyone who's been committed to the quest. So if Mickey committed some people, I would take his willpower and add it to all the people on my side who have willpower. So in this case, it's just a 4 willpower. So right now, during the questing phase, the heroes have 4 willpower. The next thing that happens is we are going to draw cards from the encounter deck equal to the number of players and add them to the staging area.
Right.
So since right now it's just a 1-player game, we'll just flip 1 card and add it. And then what we do now is read to see if there's any win revealed or forced or stuff like that, if anything applies.
It does have a force, but it's when he attacks, so we can ignore that right now.
Yep.
So now Jeb's going to...
Yeah, what you do now is total the threat of all the cards in the staging area. So this is a 1, a 2, and a 2, so that totals to 5. And my girl only had 4.
So it's their threat against your willpower.
Yep. And when you compare it, you see who wins and who loses, or whatever. So in the case that the enemies win, you take the difference, so 5 minus 4 is 1, and you add that to your threat level. So right now we're sitting at 24. Since we lost this, we go up 1 to 25.
And now that Jeb has touched the threat dial, the significance of the threat dial is if that thing ever gets to 50, you lose.
Yep. So
and
we're halfway
so you're
there.
already halfway there. And Jeb actually started with a very low initial number with those 3 heroes. Well, I don't know that. Based on the way we play, it's pretty low.
Yeah.
We usually start closer to 30, so.
All right, so...
But what if,
for example...
you had committed somebody else, Jeb?
Yeah.
Like everybody at the same time.
I committed... I'll add those 2, right? No, that'll...
Yeah, sure, that'll be a tie.
Yeah, okay, so tie. I'll add them. I total them, so there's 5 willpower to the 5 threat that we know. So 5 versus 5 is a tie, so nothing happens.
So and that's good too. It's kind of good or bad, but taking threat, not good.
Yeah, right.
So
and then the last case scenario is, say I commit these 2. She has an ability that if I use it during the quest phase, I can discard a card from my hand, which I'm going to do. I just throw it in the discard, and it raises her willpower by 1.
Actually, it lets everybody.
Yeah, it lets everyone discard a card to raise her willpower by 1. So if it was a 4-player game, she could go up 4 more. But right now it's solo, so I discarded a card. She's at 5. This is a 1, so that's 6 total compared to the 5 threat in the middle, which is 1 in our favor. And when the heroes win,
we get a progress token.
Yep.
So that is the main way to get progress tokens on the quest that you are trying to accomplish in the game. I'm not saying there aren't any other ways. This is the main way that progress tokens are put on to the quest.
All right, and I guess now's a good point or time to talk about if we actually hit that number. Since there's this number says 8. If we had placed the 8th or 9th or 10th or whatever progress token on it, we would immediately stop everything in the game. We
And
would
go on to the next card.
Yep, we remove that from the game, and we would read the next card, see what it says, flip it over, see what that says, and there's now another amount of progress tokens we have to put on. So that's how that works.
Key to remember what Jeb just said, though, is it like temporarily does stop the game. Like, whatever triggered that, don't finish out the round, don't do anything else. You resolve the completion of that.
Alright, so that is the whole questing phase. So once that comparison is made, you either increase your threat, do nothing, or put a counter on equal to whatever. So these two are exhausted from the game. They cannot do anything else.
Unless you can re-ready them.
So you have to keep in mind how many people you're committing and how many you don't, because the ones you don't are usually saved for battle.
And just think about how we started here. We knew that there was already 3 here. Jeb's best card is only a 4, and we know we have to flip 1.
Yeah. So the odds are we would have thought that a 2 or a 3 might pop up, so we try to do that much at least. So after the questing phase is the travel phase. So in this phase, you can look at all the cards in the staging area, and if there is a location, you can choose to travel there.
So we have a location, and we are going to choose to travel to the location because we want to show you what traveling to the location is. Actually, when you play the game, you're going to find that you are going to travel to locations because you don't want them sitting around.
Yeah, because they just sit there and add threat.
We can talk about that for a second. Talk about the staging area for a second. Since we're going into the travel phase. Real quick, what's going to happen in the travel phase, if you want to take a location, it's going to go over here.
We just set it.
We set it over here. Some diagrams show it like that, whatever. We like it over here to the side. This is our current location. You can slide these over if you want. And so we've traveled there. It's important to note that that is not in the staging area now. Okay? It is out of the staging area. Otherwise, it just sits here and the threat levels stay. So if you accumulate a bunch of locations in here, it's going to be bad news.
Yep. So since we traveled there, the staging area is a 4 now. If we hadn't, it would have been a 5.
Right.
And then another thing for locations is when you saw how we put the progress token on the quest.
Yeah.
If we're at a location, all progress tokens go to the location before it goes to the quest.
Right. So in the previous example, when that one, if we were starting it with this location in play, would have gone here. And the mechanic, the way that works is as you go along, blah blah. I hit 3, it goes over. Okay, well, what if I have spillage, Jib? What if I get 4?
If you put 4 on that, any spillage will spill over to the quest itself.
But Jeb, what if I have spillage on a quest?
Oh, if you have spillage on a quest, nothing spills over. So you can spill over from the location onto the quest, but you cannot spill from a quest onto the next quest.
So if I completed this with 5, 2 would go over here, and this would be cleared. If I completed this one that cost 8 and I had 10 on here when it got completed, nothing happens.
And once you clear a location, it just goes to the discard unless it has a note on the bottom that says victory points, and victory points go out of the game. So we pretend we got rid of that location. So after the travel phase, what's next, Mickey?
After travel, we start the encounter phase. Okay? So, during the encounter phase is when we start to get ready to engage the enemies. And the way the encounter phase works is the first player is able to, or starting with the first player, each player is able to optionally engage one of the creatures in the staging area. What does that mean? Okay, so when you engage a creature, it moves down in front of you. If I was playing the game, let's say it would come over here, okay? But it goes in front of the person that's engaging it. All right? Those are optional. What that the point of optional means you get to ignore these threat level or cost numbers on the monsters unless they say otherwise. Some of them will say otherwise. Okay, so you have to obviously read the cards.
All right.
Okay, so after the optional phase, then we check for
The engagement check.
the engagement check. Yes.
All right, so right now I'm sitting at a 24 threat. That's my threat level. So we need to look at the top, or what is it?
Yep, we look at the threat cost of these cards, okay? So, this is a 25, and this is 35. And again, starting with the first player. First player is really key in this game, too. A lot of effects will affect the first player, so you need to be aware of that all the time. Jeb and I have played a lot, and sometimes we forget to pass the first. We've gotten better now, but we used to forget to pass it a lot and then go, oh, who's first player? And it really, really makes a big difference, so try to keep that in mind. Anyways, so that's a 24, this is a 25, and that's 35. So, if we didn't optionally engage, those can just stay there.
Yep.
Nothing will come down in front of it. But,
say I was at a 25.
alright, so then we go along here, and, oh, it's a 25. So that is going to automatically engage Jeb over there.
So it comes to engage me. Alright, so since I'm at a 35, I'll look at the monsters, and we start with the highest number.
Well, the important thing to know is we look, and they both can come down.
Yes,
so how do you determine?
Yep, so since I'm first player, I will look at the highest, 35. I'm at 35. He comes down.
Again, why first person is so important.
Yep.
Because the highest one's going to come out. So
if Mickey was playing and he was at the 26, say, then the spider would check for him next, and it would go to him instead. But since it's a single player, this can't go to a different person. So guess what? Coming down to me.
So he's getting both of them because he's so high. But talk about a little strategy for a second. What if I'm teamed up with Jeb, and I know if Jeb has to take that, Jeb's gonna get dead.
Yep. That's usually the case.
So if I want to, if you remember, I have an optional engagement. I know this is going to go down to him anyways. I don't want him to have to take this big guy because maybe he's going to get... I can survive it and he can't. So I could optionally engage this to keep it from coming. But remember, that's the first phase. You have to do that first. And, you know, and sometimes the card doesn't allow you. So.
So say we're at 25 and this one comes down.
Yep.
So that's the engagement check. So what comes after that?
Now we have combat.
Combat. Alright, so to begin combat, it's always the monsters are going to attack the people first.
This game is so vicious.
So
right.
The first thing that we do is deal shadow cards to all monsters that are engaged
with a player.
Yeah, so that's the only one, so we'll deal the top card of the encounter deck face down to it. So what this means is once all the cards have their shadow cards, we start with the first player.
Yep.
And then
the monster will attack.
Yep. So this monster is going to attack me, so I have to declare a defender, or I could not declare one. So if I do, say I choose her to defend, then we deal with that. If I don't, then this is going to directly attack me. And if it directly attacks me, all damage it does has to be placed on a hero.
A single hero.
Yeah. So you usually want to defend stuff.
And we'll get to this in a minute, but this could do bad stuff. So if Jeb chose not to defend, okay, this would we would reveal this, but let's say that this did nothing. The attack would go through for 2, and he has to place 2 damage on one of his heroes.
Yep.
Okay, so if he did defend, he would tap the card that's going to defend. We would reveal the shadow card. And if you remember listening to it, oh, look at that. We got a shadow effect.
Yep. So
okay, this is where the shadow effects come into play. Go ahead, Jeb.
Alright, so as you can see, underneath that line it says shadow, so it means it's a shadow effect. And what this does is this effect gets added to the monster. So it says, defending player must choose and exhaust one character he controls, 2 characters if this attack is undefended. So if I had not defended, then I would have had to exhaust 2. In this case, I have to exhaust 1, but look at that, all my people are exhausted, so that shadow effect was not as harmful as it could be. There are some that increase attack, some that go through shields.
If he was saving characters to attack this, because remember now this is exhausted, he has nothing to actually attack with. If they were ready though, that spider or that shadow effect right there just wiped him out. So now he's kind of messed up.
Yep. So once we're done with the shadow effect, we just throw that card in the discard, yep. And then now we do the actual attack.
Okay. So let's say. Okay. Go ahead. Let's back it up. Got a different shadow card.
All right.
So let's say that nothing. Let's say that he left that for an attack. He took the damage because the spider. He flipped this and went, oh, no shadow effect. This got discarded. Spider did its damage to... Who do you want to damage, Jeb?
Since she's normally not blocking, I'll put 2 on her.
Okay. So she has 1 hit point left.
Yeah.
And now it's Jeb's turn to attack. Oh, let me back up just a second in terms of defending. Yep. Only 1 defender.
Yep. And then in the case of defense, if she was defending this guy, you would take his attack, which is 2, and subtract her shields, which is 2. So in this case, if she blocked him, there would be no damage. But in this case, we left it undefended, so the 2 damage gets directed to one of the heroes. I chose her.
Or if this had a higher attack, like Jeb said, and it was it's always the difference that goes on it. So if this attacked for a 3, and Jeb blocked it with that, that would have 1 damage on it.
Yep. So since he's done attacking, now I have a chance to attack back. And you can only attack with ready characters, so since we saved her, she's able to attack. So what this means is I'm going to choose her to attack. Her attack is a 1, and the spider defense is a 1, so the difference is nothing. I did nothing.
Right.
However, say Mickey was playing and he had trusted Legolas.
Great. Jeb's leading me into describe ranged for you, I think.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So Legolas, Jeb will probably blow that up for you. Has a ranged attack, subtype or whatever. He's a ranged character. So a ranged character can help during Jeb's attack phase. So I do the same thing. I exhaust. Now, my ranged attack gets added to his regular attack. So he has a 1, Legolas has a 3, so now Jeb's attacking for 4.
So we have a total of 4, and its defense is a 1, so it's going to be damaged 3. Another thing to note is, say Mickey isn't there, and I have both of these guys ready, then they can actually both attack the spider. So you can have multiple people attack, but not multiple people defend.
Yes.
So
the one of the basic keywords in the game is, along with ranged, there's another card that will say sentinel. A sentinel is allowed to help block on somebody else's turn.
Yeah. So that's an example of the battle. That'll go. Each monster is going to make an attack, then each player is going to have a chance to attack back, and once all that's done, then that is the end of the combat phase.
Right. And not to confuse you, just because a sentinel can help block doesn't mean you get double blockers. So
right.
Jeb can't send a blocker and the sentinel can't block. It's the sentinel or...
Right.
Great.
So like Mickey's sentinel would come block for me, but I wouldn't have anything help it.
Right.
So after the combat phase is done, it's the refresh phase. So what do we do in the refresh, Mickey?
Alright, so refresh all your cards, Jeb.
Alright, so they all go back up, face up, readied.
Alright, and you automatically increase your threat marker by one.
And there are some cards that would say in the refresh phrase, increase it by like 1 or 2 more, so that effect might come up.
That could come up. And then the last thing to do is pass that wonderful first player token. Of course, in a single player game, it wouldn't pass at all, but like I said, important to keep note of where it is.
And then after the refresh phase, it just starts back a new round. And like we said at the beginning, you always get a resource and draw a card. So.
Right. So he's got new cards. Now he's got a little bit of resource saved up. And it would go right into the planning phase. Remember, allies, attachments, possibly events. And then it would go into the
questing.
Into the questing phase. Number of players. Remember, this always flips by number of players.
Travel after the questing.
Travel.
Then.
Well, actually, remember, he would have committed people to the quest first, done the comparison, see what wins, increase that. If you lost, if you tied, leave it alone. If you won, place the number of progress tokens of the difference between the numbers onto the quest.
Then after you do one of those 3, you'll pick a location to travel to if you want to. You don't have to. After that, you do the whole battle, encounter, combat stuff. So the encounter...
Start with the engagement part.
Yeah, engagement, sorry. Engagement checks. You can do one optional engagement per person. Then you actually do the engagement checks where they come down to you, depending on your threat. After that, all the monsters get to attack, with the shadow cards being dealt to them. Then, if you have any ready people, then they can attack monsters. And then after that, it's the refresh phase again. And it just keeps going and going until you win or lose. And the losing conditions is if you have the threat of 50 or higher, it's over. Also, I think if one entire player is eliminated, right, Mickey?
I'm sorry.
Losing condition, in a single game, if all 3 of my heroes die, then it's over.
If it's solo.
Yeah, if it's solo.
Yeah.
If it's a 2-player game, if all 3 of my heroes die,
then I'm left alone.
Yeah, Mickey's left to
so it's not over unless every single hero is wiped out. So it's not necessarily a player, but I can tell you right now, if you lose just one hero, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever won, except the
when we've been really close to the end, we've tried it, but most of the time, we got to be honest. If we lose a hero early, we just call it and start over. All right, I just wanted to point out, sorry, Jeb, when he asked me that question, I was trying to show you guys something. This is a pretty nice little chart in the book. Jeb's going to hold it up there.
You can see the colors.
All right, and it's step by step. They do a really good job. Sure, you'll have questions as you go along, but anything in that says player actions, that's when you can do stuff. Particularly the events, because that's when it'll get tricky.
And then, Mickey, how do you win this game?
You can win?
Yeah, I know.
No, you can't. You're kidding. Alright. So, if we keep going along, and, oh, look, we got through that quest, and we flip that over, oh, we got through that quest. You'll see what happens here, maybe, if we win. And then we finish, you'll notice they do neat things in this game. There's two level 3s. I won't tell you what happens because I don't want to ruin it. But one of these is going to come up, and if we finish that, if we finish the condition on the last quest card, we automatically win.
Yep. And then that's the final for the quest. As we said earlier, you choose the quest that you want to play. The way me and Mickey have been doing it is we start from the beginning and just play there's 3 quests in the core, and then there's the adventure packs, and that just kind of keeps the whole story going.
You'll want to play it in most likely in order, unless you want to start going and trying to make things harder and stuff.
Yeah, and
then there's actually, if you want to keep track of your score,
This is on the back of the
Yep, this is
rule book.
on the back of the rule book, and keep track of score. Jeb and I tried to do that for a little bit. We get, honestly, to tell you the truth, we get too engrossed in the game.
Yeah.
Because you need to keep track of every single round. Like when you do a round, you need to tick it so that you can, because rounds, how quickly you did the quest makes a difference. If you guys are interested, you can look at the back of your book. But anyway, some of the things that it goes over is what was your final threat level. The threat cost of each dead hero comes into play. Damage tokens remaining on heroes comes into play. The victory points earned and number of rounds comes into play. I think that's about it. So all those factors would come into play if you want to keep score.
Yeah, you pretty much input all those into their formula, and it gives you a number.
So if you wanted to try, like Jeb said, we're following the story, so we don't play a whole lot of things over and over again unless we keep losing. That happens a lot. But if you were a person that is like, you got to play this a lot solo, you might want to go back and try a quest, see if I can beat that score I got last time.
Yep. And then the final thing before we start playing is the different difficulty levels you can do.
Yep.
So there's a normal mode, which you just take the cards that are all on the quest, like all the cards that are in the quest, you put them all in and you play it. For an easier variant, you can take all the cards that are in the quest and remove all the gold circles, like Mickey had said earlier. You remove all those cards from the game. Another thing you can do is the Nightmare decks, which are kind of like an extra pack you can buy, which I believe you just add them. Or do you play with the whole thing, or?
I think it takes you. I believe it tells you to take some of the original ones out and then add the Nightmare deck.
Okay, so that makes it even more difficult.
Why you would need more difficulty on me?
And then the final thing, actually in the rule book, is if they have some very, very complicated, or some very, very difficult things to do. So what we found is each of the quests that we do, we kind of if we lose, we kind of alter our decks. They have this kind of like...
This is just in the rule book. It's just for the poor.
Yeah.
But it says just try to play all three of them back to back, not refreshing anything.
Yeah, so you keep all your wounds, your threat will stay what it's at, so you have to do... Normally it's hard enough to beat a quest under 50 threat. To beat 3 in a row under 50 is hard. And then, some people will try to do multiple quests with just the same deck, not making any changes, and that sometimes is difficult. But yeah, so there's multiple ways you can play this game. We just played on the normal one. We have the gold card, or the gold circle cards in there.
Yeah, we don't decrease any difficulty level when we play. I mean, we don't want to breeze through it. It's part of the fun of the game to us. So, I guess at this point we will set up for a 2-player game, the real thing. So you guys will. That was probably a bit fast. If you're bored, I would actually watch us play. It might be a little bit longer, but I think you get a really good feel, a better feel of the mechanics if you watch us play through. If not, hopefully we explained it well enough so you can get going and figure it out.
Yep. All right, so I guess we'll
Be back.
get our game set up.
All right, we're